Welcome to VOP Freedom Radio's Justice Special, bringing the best to you from our studios right here in Ilion, New York. And I'm your host, Hank Mcgrath. And tonight we feature a special guest involved in a recent film documentary preview, Justice for My Brother, directed and produced by Harold Bryant of PoPMediaPro and Dan De Deo Jr., whose brother, Anthony, was the central element to this strong and meaningful document that asks for the public your own investigation, your own concern, because remember, what happens to others certainly will happen close by or within our own lives. And you can see the trailer of this movie documentary at www.mybrothersjustice.com. It's a documentary which factually reviews the fault in the home health care system today that we suffer. And before we bring on our first guest, now I ask all listeners, go to www.mybrothersjustice.com, and you'll have a few moments to check out the trailer there so you understand the meat of the matter. And any suggestions or assistance, feel free to contact us at VOPFreedomRadio@yahoo.com. And we'll be right back with our first guest.
I picked up on something else other than the additional coroner stuff over there. Risk for cardiac failure is clicking in the back of my head with the potassium.
Welcome to VOP Freedom Radio's Justice Special, and bringing the best to you from our studios right here in Ilion, New York. And of course, we just suffered serious technical difficulties, some kind of whammy from the government or what have you. I mean, there's been talk about it after the Boston situation, and who the hell knows. But one thing for sure, VOP Freedom Radio has recovered, and we're going on. We have our special guests coming right up in a few seconds now. I'm your host, Hank Mcgrath, and tonight we feature a special guest involved in a recent film documentary preview, Justice for My Brother, directed and produced by Harold Bryant of PoPMediaPro and Dan De Deo Jr., whose brother, Anthony, was the central element of this strong and meaningful documentary. And you can see the trailer at www.mybrothersjustice.com, which I suggest you do. Go visit the site. In between the songs, you can listen to or see the trailer and get a gist of this very serious situation regarding home health care here in the state of New York and the probabilities of danger our family members might be in. Now, this documentary is factually reviews the fault in the home health care system. And with that, I'd like to bring on our first special guest, and that's Dan De Deo Jr. How you doing tonight, Dan?
Good, Hank. How are you doing?
All right. And again, I apologize for the technical difficulties.
I'm just glad we're up and running now.
That's right. And with that, I'll bring Harold. And I'm going to ask Harold first. Harold Bryant, PoPMediaPro. You're right here in Scotia, New York, I believe. And you do a lot of filming and productions and direction. And this movie documentary was vitally important for you. You really were personally involved. Is that correct, Harold?
Hi, Hank. Hi, Dan. Yes, that's absolutely correct, Hank. When I go into a project, it's not just an entertainment value that I like to do when I do a film. I like to do something that has meaning to it, that people can walk away with and learn something or achieve something. And this documentary does both of those.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the aspect of the preview, not the contents. I mean, once people review the contents, and this brings up Dan, you get very humble and serious, like, what the heck is going on here? Dan, could you give our listeners, and of course I'd like to thank our listeners, we're up to 23,000 now, and that regularly download, archive, or listen in live. Could you give the listeners an idea of my brother's justice, how it happened, and the gist of the story, brother.
Yes, Hank. First, I want to thank you for having me on the air with you. This all revolves around my brother, who was being treated by a visiting nurse, and she was taking care of his wounds, and he became highly infected, and the case nurse insisted that he had no infections at all or any signs of infections. And then I had to have my brother go to the hospital, and I found out that he had several infections. And from that point, I had some videotapes, and I started looking at videotapes, and I found a lot of items on the videotapes that were not proper as far as wound care. And so I addressed it with the officials.
Mm-hmm. And you documented a lot of this discussion in contact with alleged officials who allegedly were concerned. There's a lot of alleged going on there. You've documented pretty much all of this. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep. Now,
yes.
I think what I need to do here is basically raise questions as to what happened with the investigation. And I don't know if you want me to start out by doing it that way.
Yeah.
All right. I need to raise questions about the case. Number one is, how is it possible that everyone that sees the videotapes all agree that the RN wrings out soiled washcloths onto a stage 4 wound, and it is not a crime or even a violation? And that's one of the main issues with the officials and investigators.
Right. And so folks understand, by the time you took your brother to the hospital and these infections were found, the doctor exclaimed that the infections are so much that he can't be helped.
Yeah, exactly. My brother lasted 10 days, excuse me, and then he passed on because of infections.
Right.
And the doctor at the hospital told me that my brother had so many infections when he went into the hospital that he just could not survive. And that's the whole key issue, is that his case nurse was insisting that he had no signs of infections or that he had any infections. And he addressed it with her the day before, and he had requested, or he had told her 3 or 4 times that he felt that he had infections and needed some care. And she basically ignored it.
Yes, now he was trained, because he was a paraplegic, he was generally trained to know when he has infections, correct?
That's correct, yes. He knew something was wrong, and once again he tried to address it on 3 separate occasions with the nurse on the 30th of March, 2009, and she just repeatedly said that he had no infections or any signs of infections, and just ignored it. And and again,
this is all documented in some kind of way, legitimate way. Yes.
Yeah, this is all on videotape.
Right. Now, Harold, when you first embarked on this venture of investigative research, that's essentially what it was, because you had to do an investigation on the entire aspect of home health care and what happens to people. Did you get a lot of responses from people and a lot of people, given similar circumstances, maybe not that extreme as what happened to Anthony, but nonetheless bad care or what have you? What did you hear in your investigation?
Well, when I first started out with it, it was mainly gathering information, compiling information, everything that we had. During that period of time, I met other people. I met another filmmaker who was doing a documentary on a quadriplegic in the West. They had a sort of a similar situation. But it's not uncommon. This particular type of care is more prevalent than we really care to want to admit to ourselves. I think in Dan's case, he recognized that there was a potential, and by putting closed circuit TV in his brother's room with a big sign letting the nurses know that there was cameras there, just as a deterrent to let them know that, you know, when you guys come in, do your proper job and then go home. And even with those precautions, you know, it's kind of like in Walmart with all the security cameras around. You still get people that come in there and they stop. Yeah, they just kind of eventually forget the cameras are there or something.
Now somebody, Lisa Petroselli, who was with me that night, guys, she looked at me and she said, you know something, there's probably an element of where the human character in some of these nurses' aides is they derive an idea of the condition of the patient, and if it's an extreme condition like paraplegic or they get sick a lot or whatever, they actually are clocked inside themselves subconsciously to have less care. What, do you believe that's possible?
I'll let Dan first address that.
Dan?
Well, that's really hard to say, Hank. You have, quite frankly, you have very good nurses, and you have some nurses that are not good. And in my brother's case, you know, it's hard to say. It's hard for me to say that the nurse did improper care, but you know, after looking at all the videos, I can't come to any other conclusion other than that. And I addressed this with the Attorney General's office. I gave them 25 video clips or films, and all of the excerpts and where the footage was as to where the wrongdoing was, and all of this was, quite frankly, as far as my opinion, it was just plain ignored.
Right. Now, when it came to you showing it to the Attorney General's office or individuals like that, the coroner's office, wasn't there an initial response when they saw some of the documents that you had that this is very serious?
Oh, yes. The first one to look at the films was the death investigator from the county. And he came and watched 2 hours of videotapes, and he said, Dan, I've seen enough. The district attorney needs to get involved one way or another. And from that point forward, it then went to the Attorney General's office after I didn't get any satisfaction at the county level. And you know, other issues popped up. In fact, just a month ago, the death investigator that came to the house to view the videotapes on the 22nd of April had already finalized his report on the 17th of April without even seeing the videotape evidence. And right, and I don't know, you know, something's not right there.
Yeah, he didn't tell you that either, did he, at the time that he visited you?
No, and he never told me that he was at the autopsy for my brother. And here I am showing him and telling him what's being done to the wound, with the wringing out of the washcloth and the gauze, the soiled gauze bandages going into the wound. And he never addressed anything saying that, no, you're making a mistake, that dark hole in the video is your brother's anus and not the wound. But later on, I did a phone call to the coroner, and the coroner said to me that I'm making a mistake, that the dark hole in the video was my brother's anus and not the wound. And I certainly proved that the coroner was dead wrong on that issue.
Yes, you also had medical consultants review, and what was their determination? Exactly.
I hired a consulting firm, an RN consulting firm, and she reviewed the videotapes twice. She made 2 reports, and she concluded that I was correct. The dark hole in the video was in fact the womb and not the anus, and that the coroner was dead wrong.
If I may, let me just jump one. Harold,
Yes.
you know, we work on a project right now looking at a film, studying things scientifically. You've studied scientifically that film. What's your deduction?
When I first watched the film, I had nothing but the very first superficial viewing of the film. I thought this nurse was doing a remarkable job. I mean, here she is coming in on to once every other day or something, and she's doing this wound care, and she's treating this man and taking care of him. And the first impression was very admirable, that she's doing a remarkable job. And don't get me wrong, that we love our nurses. We can't live without them. They do long, hard hours. They do remarkable work for us. But when I looked at the tapes again, and I had Dan when he was right there, I said, Dan, I need you to help me out here. What am I seeing here? And then when he would point out just some subtle details, these little subtle details all of a sudden became expounded, and they were like in your face. I'm like, oh my God, you're kidding me. I see that now. And I can see how anyone else that would superficially glance over these videos would do the exact same thing that I did, would say, a cursory view of it would say, she's doing a good job. She's doing nothing wrong. You have to look at it with a different eye. You have to look at it for what their job is and how to prevent infections and how to do clean care. And to the last day, Dan and I, sitting in his home editing, came across more infractions, more elements that we missed on the first time around. So the nurses do a great job, but when they get in a situation where it's redundant and it's over a period of time with consistency, you kind of think, well, are they just being lazy, not changing their gloves? Are they being lazy by doing this? And I try to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, the way I think some of the officials were doing. And after looking at these films, you have to step back and say, no, that's not the case. This is deliberate. What you're seeing, what we see in these films, there's no other explanation for it. No other explanation for it.
Yeah.
It's not an accident.
No, and it's not. And, of course, so the listeners know, you have many, many years involved with film and movie making and videography, and I mean, we're working on a documentary ourselves, and you've been doing this for quite some time. You've worked for HBO, Pepsi commercials, on and on. So you know film, and
the first part of my life, yes, was dealing with asset protection and personal property and personal protection of people through security and law enforcement work, and this just fell right in with it. I've probably testified in court 200 different occasions in people's behalf, protecting their assets. And when the Attorney General says they couldn't use videotapes for the reason that they stated, was just ludicrous to me, absolutely ludicrous. It was just they said they can't use videotapes because they're not time date stamped. You see a crime or you see evidence on a videotape, and they say, well, we can't use it because there's no date or time on it. And that's ludicrous.
Yeah, we don't know when the crime occurred. Yeah.
Well, that's what they're saying. But you can prove, it's easy to prove that. And you get someone that swears and they testify that that's when it happened. That's all that's needed. So
that's
it's
right.
as simple as that.
And that's where we find the evasive behavior of the authorities, hoping this goes away, especially when you have money being divvied out for health care. And I'm sure home health care is very much involved in this big-time money coming from the feds, especially when they're trying to empty the hospitals a little and create more home health care or more institutions as well.
Well, it's funny, yeah. Dan had just mentioned one of the one of our political representatives he reached out to said that he was busy because he was attending a fundraiser for a political or for a particular healthcare organization that we did not name in our documentary. So, and that's why we couldn't. That particular person couldn't contact us.
Oh, that's incredible. There's no way you can tell this public figure's name.
No, that's not necessary.
Yeah, because it's actually Hank. You would have to get the phone book out and go through every single one of them. I contacted numerous officials myself. Dan, over the course of 4 years, contacted many of them, going all the way to as high as you can go without a response.
That's right. Now, Dan, when the last we had talked, you had mentioned that if you could change some policies having to do with home health care to make it more secure and more safer, that these kind of circumstances don't occur, that to some degree that would be some justice for your brother. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be satisfactory on my part to get a law introduced, Anthony's Law or something, to protect other people from being treated the way that he got treated.
That's right.
In order to do that, you have to get you have to get your officials to agree to sit down and watch the documentary and see what actually took place, and that's the only way that they're going to be able to see what really happened. And
that's right. And I don't know if you know yet, Dan, but I know Harold knows. I had already reached out as an investigative reporter from VOP Freedom Radio with an extensive email and a phone call to the New York State Assemblyman Richard M. Gottfried's office. He's the head of health committees in the New York State Assembly. And I was referred to Monica Miller, that's who it was, and she's in charge of home health care issues. And so that email went to her, sending her to my brother's justice site and a request to set up a meeting with you and Harold to review the film and review the issues right there in the New York State Assembly's office that handles health. Yeah.
That would be fantastic, Hank, if that could come about, so that people can see what actually happened. Because
that's right.
Yeah, when I gave these films to the investigators, everything was written down in summaries as to the footage location and what actually occurred, and it was just handed to them on a platter as to how easy I made it for them, and they just swept it under the table in plain English.
Yeah, with much less than what you showed, I could get a grand jury indictment. You know what I mean? So much less than what you showed. All right?
Exactly.
Either in a civil court. Matter of fact, less than what you showed, I could get a civil court to find guilt. You know what I mean? So,
this isn't about civil, and we're certainly not knocking any or all nurses. We're just trying to eliminate one or two bad apples that are in the videotapes doing filthy wound care, and and the fact that he had 3 strands of infections in his wound, and plus other infections at the time that he went into the hospital. I don't know if you want to call that negligence or what, but you got a professional looking over somebody, and here he dies 10 days later from infections. Something needs to be done.
Yeah, exactly. You need to. It should be able. We have science enough to show where infections came from and what period and how it came to be. That could all be put together with a good CSI operation. But again, I believe, Dan, that what they're doing is they're being very protective over health care right now, as monies are funneling in and being divvied out and restructured departments and stuff like this. They don't want any accusations right now. That's what I believe.
Well, that's true.
Mm-hmm. We'll be right back after this. We'll be right back after this song with Dan De Deo Jr. and Harold Bryant. VOP Freedom Radio is sponsored by tonight's show, Steve's Custom Jewelry and Repair. Choose a design that lasts a lifetime. 66 Otsego Street, Ilion, New York. 13357 315-894-4389. Steve's Custom Jewelry and Repair. And, of course, I'd like to give the floor to Dan De Deo Jr. Dan, please, let folks know how to contact you and support, okay?
Yes, they can contact me by calling area code 518-279-4131. That's my home phone. Mm-hmm. Or they can call my cell phone, same area code, 421-5508.
Beautiful. And, of course, you'll be pounding this, and we hope that we get good reception from New York State Assemblyman Richard Gottfried's office. And VOP Freedom Radio isn't going to let this go either. See, that's where the trouble starts. You know what I mean? We support, some changes, modifications, some proposals, something that would prevent, like you said. Matter of fact, didn't the authorities call it bad care?
Well, yes. I mean, those are the things that are very disturbing. Is the New York State prosecutor stated to me in a phone conversation that I asked her, well, what do you call wringing out a washcloth in a wound and putting the gauze in the wound? And she says, well, you call it bad care, bad health care. But she changed her mind, apparently, because she never followed through with any kind of charges against the RN.
Right. And, of course, wasn't that the one who ran the committee that was no committee? It was just one person?
No. The next...
somebody different,
the next New York State agency that I went to was the New York State Education Department Office of Professional Discipline. And they're supposed to have a board review. They were supposed to review all the videotapes. And I found out from reading their letter that they sent me to where they closed the case, and it stated a board member. So I raised that issue with the supervisor, and he had stated, well, this board member looked at all of the videos, which were, 2,000 hours of videotapes.
Yeah.
It's just impossible that this person could possibly have seen all of those videotapes in a short period of time. But he based his decision and stuck to it that she said that everything that was shown in the videotape was normal standards for nursing care. So, I mean, what they're saying is you can take a washcloth and wash a person's private areas and take that washcloth and immediately wring it out over a stage 4 wound, and that you can take gauze bandages and wipe private areas that are soiled and place that gauze bandage into a stage 4 wound, and this is standard practice.
Right.
If you want to believe that one.
Right. Now, Harold, where are you going with it? Are you going to preview this again?
Our intentions are, and we've got some other ideas of a weekly webcast, possibly. We've talked about reaching out to the FBI to investigate some of the issues involving the coroner and some of the follow-up. But Dan is determined, regardless if I'm involved in this picture or not, which I plan to stay involved as long as I can. But Dan is not going to let this go away, and I don't blame him. And I would do. I support his feelings in it. That this is something that the public needs to be aware of. He found an issue, took it to he followed all the proper procedures. Everyone that looked at it in the official capacities agreed with him. And then some bizarre twist of fate, they said, nope, we changed our mind. There's nothing wrong. So, yeah, we are going to continue this battle until it's resolved.
Beautiful. Well, I had told, I put you on the fire. I had told Dan that, don't worry about it. Harold will take this program, download it as MP3, cut off the front where the technical difficulties came from, and hook you up, Dan.
That's what I do.
Hopefully you'll be able to do that, brother.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I'm very much honored, and of course I work with Harold Bryant on special projects as well, and he works with us in so many different things, and I understand. I know he's modest, Dan, but you may not know it, but Harold received a volunteer service award from the President of the United States. Did you know that, Dan?
No, I didn't. That's great. Wow.
You see? So I'm talking, he's a very modest guy, very experienced, and though he has to survive and he has a business, this gentleman does what he can for folks that are struggling, etc. And again,
Hank, my hat's off to you too. You and your station and everyone involved in the support of your station all have such a strong assertiveness to help the people, and that's where you're the voice of the people. That's where your radio station comes from, and we really appreciate you allowing us to come on and express our views and share them with the public.
No problem at all. For $14.95, I'll anyway. So thanks, brother. Dan, it's an honor having you on. And is there anything the listeners may do to contact you, and what you're looking for, any suggestions, etc.? And of course, again, we hope that we can shake and rattle some attention out of the Assemblyman's office, who is the head of healthcare. A final say, Dan.
Yeah, well, the key thing is, if there's somebody out there that can possibly give a hand, it would be greatly appreciated. And by that I mean that have connections with our officials or attorneys that want to get involved in this pro bono, I would hope, to help this cause so that it doesn't happen to other people.
That's right. That's right. I'll be up your area, Dan, your Brunswick area, I believe. I'll be up to Petersburg to visit my sister on Saturday with my 3-year-old daughter, so that'll be rather cool. Nice area up there. Again, it's an honor to have both of you on, and I hope to maybe reach out to you next week or the following week to keep doing follow-ups on my brother's justice. Is that okay? Well,
that would be great. I would appreciate it very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Got it.
And just one more little plug. People can find information out at mybrothersjustice.com, just the way it sounds, mybrothersjustice.com, and to review more about this. And I hope to keep the website updated so that people can see what's going on.
Yes.
That's right. And Dan, didn't an actor, a well-known actor, get involved as well?
Yes. Joe Donofrio came in and realized the importance of this and donated his time and acted in the documentary for us at no charge, and that was a great thing that he did.
That's right. That's right. It's a important documentary as well, and I hope people get to see it. And now it's time for the politicians to preview it and start dealing with reality instead of bills they don't read, etc. So,
yeah,
that's right.
The key thing is to get some people off their armchairs and come and look at the documentary, or call me and I'll give them a tape.
That's right. So we'll think of creative ways to reach the folks here at VOP Freedom Radio. And again, we thank you both. Have a great night.
Well, thank you very much,
Hank. Dan, and I'll talk to you later.
Okay, Val. Thank you, Hank, again. I really appreciate
got it, brother.
Okay, thank you. All right, bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.
And if you have a healthcare problem, home healthcare problem, and you think things aren't working out right and you'd like to give support, go to mybrothersjustice.com, and as well, tell somebody